Hi, and welcome to my prompt hierarchy staff training video. First off, I would like to discuss what is prompting. Prompting is two main types, least to most and most to least. Prompting can be used with all ages and ranges of disabilities. Least to most is most effective when students have the prerequisite skills to complete a task. Most to least is most effective when students do not have prerequisite skills to complete a task. Why is prompting so important? It is important to note that there is always natural occurring cues that occur before a behavior. The goal for prompting is for students to respond to natural occurring cues to master independence. Educators, such as ourselves, have the ability to fade the prompts because of the prompt hierarchy to promote independent success. Here is an example of the prompting hierarchy. As you can see, most to least is on the left side and least to most is on the right side. Some hierarchies have it opposite, but either way, one is pointing up and one is pointing down. As you can see, they have verbal, gestural, visual, modeling, and physical. On this hierarchy by Katzenbach et al., there is not an independent section. Sometimes authors leave out that section just because we know independence is no prompts at all. So then you have that verbal prompting, which is indirect or direct spoken prompts, which is an example that a teacher will ask a student, what snack do you want? If there's no response, then the teacher may paraphrase into a more direct saying, you want more of a cracker if they've already had a cracker. So playing with there's different verbal prompting. Gestural prompting is just like in its name, gesturing. Non-verbal prompting, which includes facial expressions, pointing, and physical indication. So something physical that you're just pointing at it. So just like an example that Kurtzenbach et al. States, a student is walking around the classroom. The teacher looks at the student and points to his or her seat. The student automatically sits. So any kind of pointing like that, or if you want them to focus on a different picture, specific pictures in a book, you would want to use this as pointing to get them more attention. Visual prompting includes pictures, objects, drawings, or symbols that accuse the student. If you want the kids to line up or remain in their seats, you may want a picture card or some kind of symbol for them to line up. We often use these with students with intellectual disabilities, students that have cognitive disabilities, that they need an extra prompting, so visual. Modeling prompting is actually in kind of two stages. Full model, that's full or partial. It provides a demonstration of the expected behavior. So if you want a student to turn to a certain page in a book, you actually may model that on the smartboard or physical, but without touching the student. Physical prompting involves manual guidance. So hand over hand, hand under hand, touching the elbow, any kind of guidance to where you're actually physically touching the student. It may also be full physical or partial. So if you are doing like partial, a student is asked to point to like the green apple and the student does not respond, then the teacher touches the student's elbow and repeats the directions. So kind of a simple prompt. Sometimes you have to guide them, which is hand over hand and such. And so there is kind of a system of different steps to implement the prompting. First, you have to identify the skill or behavior that you want the student to learn. You have to break down that skill into sequence, so task analysis is much needed in that. Select a cue or task directives to indicate the student's performance of the skills. So you want that prerequisite skills, what they can do. So that will help you see if you want least to prompt or most to prompt. And then you identify the teacher paraprofessional. Which one is going to be utilizing the strategy with the student? And it can be both of you, teachers or professional, or another individual like OT or PT or even speech. Identify the activities and the times you want to teach the skills. They're not always going to be, they may be throughout the day, but best practices is that you set a set time for those to work on it. And then identify which prompts you want to use. So that brings back to that sequences. So if they can do certain prerequisite skills, they may need to do least to most instead of most to least. And then you determine that mastery. Where does that fading happen? Because we want to fade to independence. So if you're working on most to least, so if you're starting with the physical prompt and going back up to verbal, you may need to figure out where that time is to fade into those different levels, and vice versa if you go on least to most. If they need more time, then you may need to reverse the role and go to most to least. Then select the reinforcement. So anytime we want to give correct responses, we want to praise those correct responses, and that way it will promote independence if they need to do it over and over again. And then also the last step, when you have all that in place, you begin the prompting sequence. So here's some pros and cons that I found, and they are, I would say, true, because I've done multiple least to prompting activities, and it does give every opportunity to be as independent as possible. Each time you present a task, you're provided a chance for the student to complete it independently. You're presenting that task, and every time they get it right, they are one step into independency. It's probably the most intuitive way of prompting, so we tend to let students be independent as possible, and so we may start with that least to most first, and then that guides us into which fading do we want to use. The disadvantages, it gives you limited help to start, because sometimes we don't automatically know where to begin, we just have to do it. So that actually is time consuming to follow each step and skill, and then having the wait response to be independent. So that's why we say not to do it all day, because it is time consuming and it will eat up some time. So we have to section out where we want to do it. But you know, there's pros and cons to every thing that we have as a strategy. So I believe that least to most or most to least prompting is very beneficial for kids. It promotes natural curing in the environment. So if you guys have any more questions, I do have the references listed here for you guys. Chris out of Autism Classroom did pros and cons, so that's where I found those pros and cons for fading. Kitzenbach, ETL and all did promoting sequence tip sheet. So that was very important for looking at the different examples and how to do the setting up your prompting hierarchy. So like you want to identify those skills first and then break it down and then figure out which way you want to go first in the hierarchy. Long did how to promote prompts effectively and efficiently out of the Autism Helper. And step to implication, this is a longer guide to help you figure out where the step process goes and how to direct you. Walt did intensive intervention practice guide, so that's there as well. So I'm hoping this is an beneficial video for you, and hope to have more videos like this.